One of the areas that you and I have to master in life is the science and the art of how to live well, and how to achieve our best and how to become our best. And what I'd like to do in the next few minutes with you is share some ideas from my personal experiences, but also in addition from learning from other people. I want to share perhaps a few ideas that might be helpful towards you attaining and achieving whatever that dream or whatever that vision or whatever that goal might be. Now, I usually like to begin sometimes with definitions, and I'd like to start perhaps by defining a few words. I'll begin with the word success. There's so many definitions of success out there, and I believe that the definition of success is subjective, but there are objective measures through which we measure success. You and I are both different. What I want is very different to what you want. There might be similarities, but there could also be differences. Amongst all the definitions that I've seen and I've read and I've come across, and from my experience, there's one that stands out the most to me. And I'm going to share that in one part, but also share it in a different way. Let me start by giving you the definition. Success is simply the progressive realization of a worthy goal or a worthy ideal. And that is quite interesting. But in itself, I believe it's incomplete. The way I like to define success is that there has to be joy in what you do. So I usually say that success is the joy that comes from the pursuit or the progressive realization of a worthy ideal or worthy goal. There has to be fulfillment in the journey, but also there has to be a level of achievement, growth in the journey. And when you combine both, you have a complete equation of success. Now, you and I have desires, we have dreams, we have goals. But what I found in my life particularly is the fact that in many cases, we tend to, in some way, form and fashion our lives based on other people's opinions. I've just given you a definition of success. I hope you don't simply accept my definition, but instead you perhaps listen to it, observe what I've just shared, and maybe decide for yourself whether you believe it's in keeping with who you are and with who you want to be. The next definition we're going to talk about is desire. Desire is simply the feeling we have within, the unexpressed feeling within each and every one of us that is looking to be expressed without. In other words, ideas and thoughts come to us, and they come to us, and in some cases they have a weak emotion or strong emotion. If the emotion is strong, we call that a desire. The feeling within us, the urge, something within you perhaps beckoning on you to do something. The unexpressed possibility of something within you seeking to be expressed without. Alfred Adler said, "I'm grateful to the ideas that chose me." And I like that because it simply means that in many cases, you and I, we either create a thought or we receive a thought from our environment and from what we have around us. And so ideas come to us, and some of those ideas want to be brought to reality, and they want to use us as a means through which they are brought to reality. Now, the final definition I'm going to talk about is the word goals. I'm sure you've heard that before. What is a goal? A goal is simply a description of what you want. If you know what you want and you can capture that description in writing, crystallize it, take it away from your head, take it away from a thought stage, capture it in writing, give it some permanence in written form. When you do that and you give it a timeline, we say that's a goal. In your head, it could be a wish, it could be a desire. When you've captured your desire, you've documented it, you've given it a timeline for its achievement, which means you've given it specificity, then we say you have a goal. 3 definitions. Now let's bring those 3 definitions together so you can understand what I'm trying to get across to you today. In many cases, we have other people tell us how we should live. And I don't claim to be an exception right now because I'm sharing with you ideas and I'm perhaps trying to share my philosophy with you. One of the things you have to do is decide for yourself whether the idea or the philosophy that I'm sharing, or that you're perhaps listening to, or perhaps that you're gathering from people around you, you have to decide as to whether that idea will take you in the direction of your dreams. Now, the biggest challenge that I faced when I started my journey of personal development was having the discipline to write my own script. And part of that discipline required that I define success for me. In many cases, most people say that you're successful when you've achieved something. In a way that is somewhat true, but it's incomplete. It's not incorrect, it's just incomplete. There are 3 parts to what I call the success experience. There is what I call the creation stage, the start. There is what I call the completion stage, the end. And there's something in between we call the journey. If you focus on success as being the end, which is the destination, then what you find is when you achieve what it is that you really, really want, what you might find is that you find emptiness within. Now think about this. The Apollo team that went to the moon suffered a lot of psychological problems when they returned from the moon. They had achieved a feat that had never been achieved before. Think about this. They had been to the moon, they had come back. The whole nation in the United States and the world looked up to them. But when they returned, a lot of them went into depression. Why? Because they didn't have goals beyond what they had originally created for themselves. And that is just to make a point that it's not really what you get that is the most important thing. You've got to look beyond that. There is within you and I something that I call an innate desire to keep growing. And if you achieve a goal and you decide that that's the end, somehow that internal desire within you, the inner person within you, somewhat is limited. Now, if you look at success as the start, which is creation, then what happens when you've begun? Now, I've seen that in so many cases. I've seen it in my life as well. You start something new, you're excited, but as soon as you start, for some reason, you lose inspiration. Now, in between both is the journey. And I believe that success shouldn't be viewed as the achievement of something or the beginning of something, but instead should be a composition of all 3. But most importantly, the journey. And the reason is simple. The joy that comes from the beginning of anything you start, and the joy that comes from the completion of something you began, is short-lived. Is short-lived compared to the joy from the journey. Now, I'm going to take you back to the definition I gave at the start. I said success is the joy that comes from the progressive and the pursuit, progressive realization, or the pursuit of a worthy goal or ideal. In many cases, the journey is the most important thing, for a simple reason. It's not what you get that determines whether you're successful. It's who you become. Part of the reason we set goals is not because we want to get things at the end, or we want to start something new. Part of the reason we set goals is to compel us to become the kind of person deserving of what we really want. Let's use an example. Let's say that you would like to perhaps earn a certain amount of money. We can measure money. But let's say you have a goal that you want to earn a certain amount of money at the end of the year. Is it possible that you could achieve that goal and you'd achieve it, but you do not become the kind of person deserving of the goal in terms of the kind of person with the skills, the attitude, the character, the abilities, the talents? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. And the reason is because you can achieve that target goal by other means. There's so many ways to achieve a particular goal. What we try to do in the success equation is set a goal that will compel us to go back to the drawing board and start developing the disciplines, developing the focus, developing the decision-making ability, developing the desire, disciplining ourselves to work every day, sacrificing what we need to sacrifice, pay the price, and in doing that consistently every day, over time, we develop habits. Those habits, when repeated continuously, become a lifestyle. That lifestyle helps us fashion a new character. So we become someone deserving of the goal. And that is the point I'm trying to make here is, when you set goals, and if you're going for some successful pursuits, always focus on three things: the start, the end, the journey. But focus more on the journey. Now, for a lot of people, they do not see themselves as successful because they haven't achieved the desired end. I think it's really sad that you let go of everything that has happened from the start in the journey and your focus is so much on the end. And for many people, because we're so focused on the end, we miss out on all the beautiful experiences along the way. I often say that life is a journey, and that part of life requires that you and I collect experiences, moments, but that we savor the experiences, and those experiences fashion what we call a beautiful masterpiece that we call our life. And if you imagine that you're traveling from, say, London, England, and you're traveling to Manchester, England, and all you're thinking about is arriving at Manchester, England, that you do not take the time to absorb the scenery and look at the beautiful flowers and look at the landscape, the cars on the road, the smell of the air as you drive past one small village to the other. If you don't absorb all of that, then what was the point? What was the point of traveling? Because you see, you've missed out on the most important part of the entire journey, which is the experience. And so, in defining success, one of the things I like to share with people is this. You have to look at success as a progressive experience. And that simply means that when you start the journey, it might not be as beautiful as you want it to be. But you must learn the discipline of beginning with the end in mind, which is the destination, and working backwards every single day, every single month, every single year, to the point whereby you then have what we call sub-goals, daily goals, monthly goals, yearly goals, and then life goals. So you begin with your life goals and you work backwards to your yearly goals. Then you work backwards to your monthly goals. Then you work backwards to your daily goals. And here is the point. Pleasure comes from completing a desired goal, a desired target, perhaps achieving a vision. Progress creates pleasure. If we set a goal for ourselves and we achieve it, and we celebrate the achievement, we find pleasure. So one of the things you have to do is recognize that that journey has to be broken down into smaller journeys, so that every day you find something in your life to celebrate. Because the key to success really lies in how you use and manage your mind. And if you can manage your mind in such a way that you're really looking at how successful you are every day, as opposed to how successful you are or will be when you achieve the goal, what you find is life becomes really exciting and interesting. A lot of people say, I'm waiting for the good life. Well, you see, life is hidden in a day, and a day is hidden in life. If you cannot manage and successfully achieve one great day, then you cannot manage your life, because every day, when combined, is a life. So the key is for you and I to become really skilled at the arts and the science of living one successful day. Taking our desires and our goals and formulating and designing each day so that at the end of the day we can say, I had a successful day. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm certainly not where I used to be. I'm moving progressively. Now, if you know where you are in life, and you know where you're trying to get to, and every day you're taking a step towards that destination, you are successful. I'm going to say that again because I think it's very important. It sounds very simple, and it should be very simple, because life is meant to be very simple. If you know where you are, and you know where you're trying to get to, you know where you are, you know your location, you know where you're trying to get to, you know your destination. If you're moving from where you are and you're moving progressively towards your destination, whether it be one step or 2 steps or 4 steps, you are, by definition, successful, because you're moving intelligently and purposefully towards what you desire. That is success. Anyone who tells you anything other than that is misleading you. And if you cannot find the joy in simple things you do every day, if you cannot find joy in things you do every hour, then I hate to be the one who gets to perhaps bear the bad news. And that is the fact that when you achieve what you're looking for sometime in the future, there's a good chance that just like the astronauts that went to the moon, when you have achieved it, what you will find is that you'll ask yourself a sad question: is this all there is? And I've seen so many people do that. And so one of the things you and I must do, and one of the things I want you to try and do from today, not tomorrow, from today, is develop the discipline of focusing on achieving one successful day. At the end of every day, sit down and review the day and ask yourself the question: based on the goal that I had, beginning with the end and breaking it down to one day, based on the vision that I had for the day, what did I do right? And if you've done a lot of things right, check them off your list. Put it as a mark and you say, completed. More importantly, celebrate your small steps of progress. Question number 2 you must ask yourself is, what could I have done differently? Knowing what I know now, what could I have done differently? And here is the point. You learn very little from success. You learn from feedback. And by asking the second question, what you're trying to get is feedback. Because one of the most important ingredients in the success equation is what we call continuous and constant daily improvements. Every day you have to keep growing. And part of that growth is what we call course correction. A plane from London flying to New York, most of the times will be on what we call autopilot. The pilot sits there and he puts the plane on autopilot and the plane flies itself. But as it flies from London to New York, it's going to have some turbulence, wind forces. And along the journey, the autopilot has a flight path. The plane is trying to stick to that flight path, but the external conditions might cause it to deviate, perhaps to the left or perhaps to the right. But the plane is constantly correcting its course. And it has to do that simply because if the plane is off by just say 1 degree, just that small, and it doesn't correct, rather than arriving in New York, that plane might arrive in Miami. So the plane has to keep course correcting. You and I have to keep course correcting every day. So by sitting down and asking yourself, what could I have done differently? What you're trying to find is the gems. The gems, I call the gems of life, things that you could be better at. And you want to know what they are. Because you see, the distance or the time between when you make a mistake and when you discover the mistake you've made, and more importantly, correct your course, determines how long the success journey will be. Let me put it in a different way. Let's imagine that you perhaps are interested in cooking and you've prepared a nice dish, but unfortunately you didn't follow the instructions, the cooking guidelines, and you missed a step. And you serve the food to your family or to your friends, and no one there says, I think you put too much pepper and you didn't put enough salt. No one says anything. So you go away thinking, I'm a great chef. You keep making the same mistakes until, who knows, maybe you serve the same meal, maybe on a very special day, and you make the same mistake, and everyone maybe gets ill. And then you think, oh damn, I should have known before it got this really bad. Now, what if, on the other hand, at the end of the first day, someone said to you, I think you missed out something, or you put too much of something in the meal. One of the things you would perhaps do is go back and try again. The next day you might try the same meal and it gets better. And every day you're improving and you're improving, so that when time comes, perhaps for you to show off your beautiful cooking skills, you can prepare a meal that people can walk away from and say, that was amazing. The difference between both is when you found out about the mistake and when you corrected the mistake. So one of the things you have to do at the end of every day is course correct. If you course correct, then automatically that day is successful, because you can implement the next day the feedback that you received. So let me bring this to a close. We started by looking at some definitions: success, goals, and desire. Every day, you and I have to sculpture and design the life that we want. And part of that choice we have to make doesn't just end in choosing what we want. We have to fashion what we call the good life. And part of that process of fashioning the good life is knowing how to, number one, channel our desires intelligently, choose the right goals, and pursue those goals in the right way so that we achieve success. And if we can do that daily, and we can do that consistently, then we can create a successful life. And I really hope you do.